Okay, so we're gonna do a review of the debate between Destiny, Epstiny, and Darth Dawkins. I already sort of did one of these on TikTok, but it got kind of interrupted a lot, I guess, with callers, so I'll do it again. So here, Destiny, Epstiny, Darth Dawkins. Okay, we are live. Does the chat? Can you? The person who's watching, can you type in the chat? I want to just kind of test this out.
Your life is your choice. So
I need to get YouTube Premium. Sick of these ads. I didn't even finish the video.
So it turns out that the atheists actually violate the principle that they're standing on. They require rational justification for the absolute known as God, but the absolute that they're reasoning from, they have no rational justification for it.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. I'm going to copy that. That's sort of what I was saying to Josie last night. The atheists require evidence for absolute God, but not for the absolute that they reason from.
And then they'll say, oh, it's axiomatic.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Oh, good to see you here. Would you like to continue the conversation?
Yeah, I absolutely would. I have a better working vocabulary.
You want to start where we left off?
No, we can actually start from the very beginning.
Okay, good. So you're an atheist. What is your principled criterion of atheism?
I don't believe there's any justification for the belief in God.
If there was rational justification for God, would you believe in him?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, would God by definition be an absolute upon which everything depends?
Not necessarily. I'm not sure.
God by.
Can I see the chat? Oh, Navigator. Okay, so that's a chat. Can I type in the chat? Like if I want to post a link. Anyways, I'll figure it out later, I guess.
Definition would be, let's say, in the Christian God is an immaterial mind who has the power to initiate and bring into existence everything that exists and sustain it. So by that definition, God would be the absolute, right?
By that definition, yes.
Okay, good. So that's the working definition that I'd like to work with. Is that acceptable to you?
Yeah.
So you reject the belief in an absolute known as the Christian God because it's not rationally justified, right?
Correct.
Is that an arbitrary principle or a consistent one?
It is somewhat consistent.
Well, it's either
somewhat consistent.
It's either arbitrary or not arbitrary. Which is it?
So
it's somewhat not arbitrary.
Understand now what the technique is. So what we're going to get into is presuppositionalism, right? Do you want to just start that conversation?
This one is from Destiny's channel. Is there one on Tom Rabbit's? Well, okay, I've never heard the Tom Rabbit one. Maybe we should listen to that one.
To have a rational foundation of which of my beliefs, I will appeal to the irrationality of my subjective experience because it's the best thing that I have, and I can only speak, I guess, in degrees of probability. So, for instance, I trust.
It's not mobile live chat, and I'm not sure you're saying Elsie.
My senses because it's all I can trust, and I kind of have to appeal to that.
I didn't ask you about your senses. I said, what is the personal absolute that provides the foundation of your capacity to reason? You told me that was.
No, man, Darth's mic is not good there. Lower it.
Matter, energy, causality, and laws of nature. So I'm starting with one of those pillars, which is the impersonal absolute.
He's like blowing out his mic. Yeah, back off the mic, Darth.
that you stand upon in order to reason to withhold belief in God? What is the rational justification that there are causal connections?
I don't think I can rationally justify this. I think it's something that's just assumed to be true. It's like an axiom.
Oh, okay, good. So good. So now you've violated your principle that in order to believe in an absolute that is personal, you require a rational justification. But when it comes to your adoption,
that I just said.
Okay, so you're violating your own principle when you believe in an impersonal absolute. You don't require rational justification, so you have a double standard and you're inconsistent. So you violate your own principle upon which the foundation you claim to reason.
Style.
Yeah, I gotta get YouTube Premium.
Okay. So this is the part where you tell me that your justification for God is just my justification for existing. So I'm supposed to believe in God for no reason.
The point is your atheism is irrational by your own principle.
Sure. Because I can't fully 100% justify my existence.
Are you violating your own principle, sir?
To some extent, sure.
No, either you are or not. Are you violating your own central principle?
Somewhat, like kind of, sort of. Like, why doesn't he doesn't answer? He's not answering the questions.
That you employ for atheism?
Because I cannot deductively prove that I exist, like independent of any type of observation. Sure, I'm violating that.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so
that doesn't get me.
So your atheism is standing on a violation of your own principle of atheism, right?
Okay, sure.
Okay, good. So then you're
okay. Yeah. So Darth is saying that like his principle for his atheism, he's appealing to this principle that like he needs evidence to believe in God, but he's violating that principle when he like accepts an impersonal absolute without evidence. That's a pretty good way to put it.
Atheism is irrational.
Okay, sure.
Well, is your atheism rational or is it irrational?
If you say it's not, it's not.
No, I didn't say it was either.
If this is something they do, if you, according to you, if you say so, that's like a rhetorical technique to sort of like diminish what Darth is saying, as if his critique is like based on his opinion as opposed to like an objective fact.
Well, and I said
these kinds of like esoteric arguments.
It's not an esoteric. No, it's not an esoteric argument.
It is incredibly esoteric. When any discussion about the existence of God like relies on like examining these fundamental natures of the universe or existence, and you try to point out that like you're incapable of like inherently justifying, what is essentially unjustifiable, right? That my conscious experience or my observations somehow be independently, verified or whatever. And then you try to say, well, since you can't do this, all of a sudden, you're as irrational as I am. I think is an incredibly ridiculous way.
No, I'm as irrational as I am. We're not saying that we're irrational. We're saying that our foundational beliefs are justified because we have knowledge that's been revealed to us from God. And so based on those, we don't have these axioms, unjustified starting points or something. We have justified starting point revealed by God. And then based on that starting point, we can build like a model of reality that's coherent. And if you deny that knowledge that comes from God, you are in what Destiny is talking about, a position where like you have to just assume all these things. Like he's assuming atheism. And he's saying, well, I can just assume atheism is true, but for some reason, like why can't we just assume God is true? If we're just assuming things without reason. I mean, this is not debate. In a debate, you're not supposed to be arbitrary, which is what he's doing. And you're not supposed to be inconsistent, which is also what he's doing, because the principle he uses to justify his atheism is instantly violated when he accepts an impersonal absolute to reason from that he has no evidence for. So by his own principle, he should reject his own position. But he's inconsistent and he's arbitrary. These are the cardinal sins of debate.
That's not what I said, and you're putting words in my mouth. I'm simply pointing out.
That I'm a master.
Yeah, I did flip out on Josie last night. I kind of want to do a video. I have it queued up to when I interacted with Josie. Josie is such a bad faith piece of garbage. He's like so manipulative.
That, no, I'm simply pointing out that your atheism, which depends upon your central principle that in order to believe in an absolute, and an absolute that is personal, you require justification. But you completely flip-flop that and abandon that central principle of atheism when you claim to be able to reason about withholding belief in God, and you believe in an impersonal absolute for which you have admitted you have no rational justification. So you're atheist.
No one is dumber than T-Jump. T-Jump is like the standard of dumb. T-Jump is like the ultimate idiot, which imposes and secures the idiocy on all idiots.
By your own concession, is violating its own principle, which makes it irrational. Now, do you want to maintain that your atheism is rational?
No, I'll say it's irrational. Do you have any other arguments in favor of God that don't rely on incredibly esoteric appeal?
He's just conceding that his position's irrational and then asks for other arguments. Well, if you're why am I gonna give you an argument if you're just I'm irrational. Now give me a rational argument. What?
The universe, the proof of God is that without him you can prove nothing. Now, can you prove something without starting with the existence of the Christian?
Yeah, can you prove anything?
God, sir. Can you prove anything is the case, or do all?
I mean, like prove it. Well,
I'm not done. I'm not done with my question, sir.
I heard the.
Wait, Darth, before you ask that question. So that's interesting. Where like Darth will go on for as long as you want. So I mean, you can go on for as long as you want. Just like if you want to end, just let me know.
Does he do anything besides like the really esoteric arguments appealing to like the fabric of the universe, or is this?
No, I'm just asking you what your criterion of beliefs are, and then I'm seeing that if you're actually following it, and it turns out by your own concession, you abandon it in order to claim to reason. Your reason depends on the prerequisite of the impersonal absolute of matter, energy, laws of nature. When I asked you for the rational justification for that, you said you don't have one, which means you're violating your own principle to believe in that which is the absolute.
So when he keeps saying that, oh, these are just esoteric do you have anything other than an esoteric argument? That would be like poisoning the well. Like as if like because Darth's argument is esoteric or something that we shouldn't let's just hand away dismiss it. It's esoteric, guys. I don't need to deal with an esoteric argument. I only deal with exoteric arguments. Is that the opposite of esoteric? Right? Exoteric. Yeah. I don't deal with esoteric arguments, only exoteric arguments. I mean, what kind of shit is this?
Asking me to rationally justify something that I believe on an axiomatic foundation, right? So I can't possibly do that. I can't possibly justify.
So you're violating your
No. But all axioms are not equal philosophically.
I'm not talking that.
Okay, so he's talking about like he says not all axioms are equal philosophically. Okay, but here's the problem. Destiny is trying to defend something called foundationalism, where he's saying like these are my like self-evident. He shouldn't even be using the word axiom. He's like kind of fucking up there. I mean, I understand what he's saying though, but he's basically saying I have these self-evident starting beliefs, and from my self-evident starting beliefs, which are unjustified, I therefore have this system, and I can justify things later on based on these self-evident starting points. But here's the problem. Why should we like use your self-evident starting points? Why can't I say God is a self-evident starting point? So like to even talk about self-evident starting points, you're going to need a higher principle that allows you to delineate or demarcate between like, oh, we'll accept this self-evident truth, but not this other self-evident truth, right? So it doesn't work. Foundationalism doesn't work because he needs to keep having like an infinite regress of principles to determine like what's the correct self-evident starting point.
Can I finish a sentence?
But you're misrepresenting what I'm saying.
Okay, if I misrepresent you, then you can correct me at the end, okay? Because it sounds to me like what you're saying is because I cannot justify rationally the existence of a materialistic universe, that all of a sudden everything else becomes equally plausible, which I totally
Yeah, because what happens is like if you only have partial knowledge, you cannot ensure a coherent framework for knowledge. Because if your knowledge is partial, there could be this knowledge you don't have that would undermine everything you know to be true. Like when Neo's in the Matrix, he has partial knowledge, and then the red pill undermines everything he thinks is true. So if it's possible that there's some knowledge out there, a red pill that alters all your facts. It literally takes all facts you think are the case and changes every fact. Every fact is now a totally different fact based on this red pill knowledge. You can't have knowledge in that system with partial knowledge because you can't defeat skepticism unless you have an omniscient entity like God who can ensure like a coherent framework for knowledge. Without an omniscient entity, there's no guarantee that you have a coherent framework for knowledge because partial knowledge isn't sufficient to make knowledge possible.
I didn't say that.
Okay, can you tell me which part of that statement was incorrect?
That's not my position. First of all, you are when you claim to reason about anything, it rests upon a principle, and that is the impersonal absolute. Okay, you have conceded that, but you believe in that.
Yeah, but Destiny admitting he's being irrational is actually being more intellectually honest than T-Jump. T-Jump was being irrational and denying that he was being irrational. So, like, at least Destiny is, like, kind of admitting he's being irrational.
Impersonal absolute in violation of your central principle, which you will not believe in a particular absolute, such as God, without rational justification. But you say that you reason that God is unworthy of belief because rational justification hasn't been given for God as an absolute. But you turn right around and say that you reason in virtue of an absolute of matter, energy, causality, laws of nature. But you have just said that you don't have a rational justification for causality. You're violating your own principle, sir.
When I try to justify this to some extent, to say that I believe that this foundation of which I build my views is valid, and I appeal to my senses, you tell me that I'm not allowed to use my senses to justify anything.
I didn't mention senses, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry, because when I said that I could observe causality, you said that it's not fair to say that.
No, that's a fallacious argument.
You can't observe causality. So David Hume made this argument that, like, we observe. He used the billiard balls as an example. So you observe there's one event, like a billiard ball making contact with another billiard ball. That's one event. And then you observe a second event where, like, the billiard ball that got hit is now, like, moving, right? And so you think that there's this connection between the events, such as that, like, there's a cause event and then there's the effect event. But Hume says if we're going to be like consistent empiricists, we never actually observe the similarity or the connection between the events. Okay, so for the connection between events, we need a single unifying principle. Guess what God is? God is a single unifying principle because from God, we get existence, truth, and values. God is the source of everything in existence, everything, all truth, and all value judgments. So he's this unifying principle. He unifies reality, and he's like the glue that holds everything together. So we never empirically observe these connections between the cause event and the effect event. And so Hume says a consistent empiricist would admit that they can't uh, rationally or like justify the belief in cause and effect.
Can you tell me why it's fallacious?
Yeah, because eyesight is a set of causal connections. Would eyesight be meaningful if it wasn't the case that causal connections existed first?
This is artlist.io.
And I gotta add. I gotta give YouTube Premium.
Okay, so is the statement like "I think, therefore I am"? Is that a circular statement?
Sir, you just completely ignored my question. Would eyesight?
No, I agree that it's circular.
Can I finish my response, please?
Sure.
Okay. Now, would eyesight be a meaningful and viable concept if you didn't presuppose causal connections first?
No.
Probably not.
Okay, good. So you're presupposing causality inherent within eyesight. Eyesight is a label for a set of causal connections.
Well, Darth went nuclear there. I didn't even think about that. I was thinking about David Hume. Yeah, Darth just went straight nuclear.
So when you appeal to eyesight to justify the causal connections or rationally justify it, all you're simply saying is eyesight, which is a set of causal connections, therefore causal connections. So all you're saying is causal connections, therefore causal connections. Do you accept circular reasoning as a valid form of justifying things?
Yeah, this was a blowout. Destiny is really not that good of a debater. He's just like, he talks. He's like the Ben Shapiro thing where he talks really fast. It's a lot of like fluff. Like he's doing the like, oh, this is esoteric. And
fundamental beliefs, yes.
Oh, okay. So in other words,
okay, so he just said that circular reasoning is valid for fundamental beliefs. Well, God's a fundamental belief, so God exists because God exists. Thank you. Debate over.
Therefore, if I say God exists, therefore God exists, do you accept that line of our argument?
I mean, that's pretty much what Christians do, no?
That's just what Christians do. What you gotta do is film everyone you have relations with. See, this is what non-Christians do. See, this is the right thing to do. You gotta film all your relationships and your relations with women, and then you you threaten them with revenge porn. That's the right thing to do.
Do you accept that line of reasoning, sir?
No, I don't, because I don't
Good.
think
Then why do you accept causality, therefore causality?
because I think a belief in God is on a higher level than a
Sir,
fundamental assumption.
they're both circular arguments.
Wait, don't.
So he's just like, see how this is what I was talking about when you do this like fundamental foundationalism. Sorry, when you try to defend foundationalism and you're like, he's like, there's these self-evident truths. So there has to be this like higher principle. Like, why can't I say God's a self-evident truth? He has to appeal to some like other principle to say like, well, these self-evident truths are okay and these self-evident truths aren't. It just doesn't make sense.
So, like, I feel like in terms
If one is
of like,
fallacious, then the other fallacious, sir.
I don't agree that you can equate these two things. The materialistic,
They're both circular.
Darth, again, do not interrupt.
or no, I just, it feels like if I say that I am going to presuppose that my senses are trustworthy and that I can establish causal chains using my personal senses, that we can, from that foundation, I can evaluate the existence of God. But I don't think we can start with the existence of God and then evaluate the logicality of senses. I don't think you can.
Okay, but this is so stupid because when your starting point is to put like your faith in senses and causality, that's an inconsistent starting point, right? But like when your starting point is to put your faith in Christ, that's like consistent with the system, right? In the Christian system, it's totally consistent to put your start with faith in Christ. That's totally consistent within Christianity. So we would say that's like a virtuous type of circularity where there's consistency. Whereas like in your starting point, that is. Whereas like if your starting point is your sense data, well, that's going to lead to like that's inconsistency, right? Because within that model, we want to verify things via sense data, but we can't verify our starting point with sense data. Whereas like when I start with Christ, Christ can verify Christ.
Start from that foundation.
So is it a valid form of argument if I say Martians exist, therefore Martians exist? Is that valid?
I feel like you're trying to equate justifications for logical statements with like axiomatic foundational beliefs. It doesn't feel fair to me. Like,
do you accept reasoning
that exists independent of humans or mankind? Sure, yeah.
Do you accept circular reasoning if I said Martians exist, therefore Martians exist?
I don't. It feels to me like you're saying my axioms are circular when axioms by definition are unjustified. So I don't feel like I can ever answer this question for you.
Entirely being evasive to my question, and I understand why. Now, I ask you a question. If I argue Martians exist, therefore Martians exist, is that a valid?
Darth is trying to point out how he's being absurd by saying like, "Oh, I just have these unjustified starting points." Well, Darth's like, "Well, I can just say Martians exist. That's my starting point. I don't have to justify it." You accept that?
A form of rational justification.
And he won't accept that, right? And so it's like, well, why can we start with your empiricism, but we can't start with like Martians exist? You know, what's the difference?
No.
Okay, good. What if I said causality, therefore causality? Is that a valid rational justification?
I don't think I'm equipped to have this conversation. I don't know.
I'm not equipped to have this conversation.
Well, sir.
Okay, so he did a lot better the second time. The video that he uploaded, he does a lot better in that video, but it's still ultimately the same. Because I think what happened is after this AMA, he's like, "Oh man, Darth, blew my ass out." So he's like got together with like probably like Jack Angstrike and Detroyer, and they're like, "God, guys, help me! How do I defeat this behemoth, Darth Dawkins?" So I think they tried to coach him up, but the problem is like Jack and Detroyer are also sophist trolls. So Detroyer's a lot more respectable than Jack, though. So maybe I should make that distinction.
Sir, what's the difference between saying causality, therefore causality, versus Martians exist, therefore Martians exist?
Because causality, therefore causality, is a fair axiomatic statement that I think 99%.
Why is it?
Because it's fair. Because my beliefs are fair and your beliefs are unfair. It's not fair.
Can I finish my answer at least?
Yeah,
right? Martians existing is like a very high order thought. Like this is something that that we can look to verify in a number of ways to discuss the definitions of what is Martian, et cetera, what is not Martian, where would they exist. Like these are very high level things. Like is this song a fast song or a slow song? Is not the same question as do we arise from material properties, right? Like whether or not mankind and our experiences arises from material properties is like a axiomatic foundational question that has no justification by default. Just because that has no justification doesn't make every single unjustified statement fair, right? Not all axioms are equal.
What? Yeah, but how did... I don't see how he's like saying like it's okay to have this unjustified belief. I don't see his what's the reasoning here? I'm not. he's just kind of stating it like this is okay, this isn't okay. But there's like why?
So for instance, I could say like, I believe that all people should be treated equally. And that could be like an axiomatic foundation of which to build beliefs. But saying that going 65 miles per hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone gets you a $150 fine is not probably a fair axiomatic statement.
But why? Okay, so that's an example, but like, what is the reasoning behind this?
Sorry.
There's no reason. There's no reason behind it. It's just like this is fair. This isn't fair. This is fair. This isn't fair. Why? Why should I accept that?
Hunt was an entire filibuster and was a complete misdirection. You were not responding. You can laugh all you want, but I will tell you to your face that what you did, you completely evaded my question. Now you said that a type of reasoning where if I assert Martians exist, therefore Martians exist, you said that's not valid because it's circular. But you're asserting causality, therefore causality. They're both employing the same circular.
He just said one's fair, one's not fair, but he didn't explain why. And then he just gave examples of like things he thinks is fair and things he thinks aren't fair. But we're like, yeah, we get you don't think it's fair, but like, okay, is there like why isn't it fair? Like, what is your standard here?
Why is circular reasoning that is being used in exactly the same way as you are when you say causality, therefore causality? Why is that a rational justification? And why is if I say Martians exist, therefore Martians exist, they're both employing a stipulation and then saying therefore from the initial stipulation. They're both circular reasoning. So why is one invalid and not the other?
I have already explained this. If we
you didn't. Your response was totally.
My response was that I believe that one statement can be unjustified, and I think the other statement requires justifications. If we can't agree on that, then we can't really go anywhere from there. Maybe I'm incorrect in that, and I don't.
Oh, let's just agree that one's fair and one's unfair. Like if we can't agree, then we can't debate. This is how atheists debate. They're like, let's just agree that debate's possible because we know under our model of reality we couldn't really debate. So let's just pretend we can debate. Now that we've pretended we can debate, let's continue the debate.
Have the necessary philosophy to discuss this with you, but that would be my.
Oh, and by the way, we're rational and realists that pretend to debate. There's nothing real. You believe in a sky daddy. Now I'm gonna go pretend to debate. Excuse me.
Assertion is, I'm not trying to filibuster you, but that you can take certain axiomatic principles for granted. They can be unjustified by default, but saying Martians, therefore Martians, is like a much higher level thought that requires justification.
New air.
Wait, what was his reasoning there? Did he actually try to answer?
So
Martians, therefore Martians, is like a with you, but that would be my response was that I believe that one statement can be unjustified, and I think the other statement requires justification. So we can't agree on that. That we can't really go anywhere from there.
Let's just agree on it. Why? But he's asking you why.
And maybe I'm incorrect in that, and I don't have the necessary philosophy to discuss this with you. But that would be my assertion is.
I mean, like,
I'm not trying to filibuster you, but that
Okay.
you can take certain axiomatic principles.
So he's just being arbitrary. Again, what are the cardinal sins of debate? Being arbitrary and being inconsistent. He's being arbitrary.
Granted, they can be unjustified by default, but saying Martians, therefore Martians, is like a much higher level thought that requires justification.
Okay. So I mean, Dustin, you're ready to move on, or you want to keep going? It's totally up to you, but I promise.
I love how these moderators are like, I know, Destiny. This probably is really painful for you to like get smoked. Should we move on? Because like, let's just pretend you're good at debate. Because we pretend debate. So let's pretend you're a good debater.
Go on for as long as you want.
I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm like cutting him off, which is rude, but I don't want like everybody else to get super cocky. If he wants, we can come back at the end, I guess. We can talk more if he wants. I just don't want
to. I mean, it's like he like we can keep this going for as long as we want. Like we don't really have time limits. When our time limit is your time limit. So if you want to keep going with Darth, like you can go. Like it's totally fine. It's up to you though.
How about at the end of this we'll come back and we can do it again if he wants.
Okay, sounds good. Does that sound fair to you, Darth?
I have to leave in less than 5 minutes.
Oh
well, I mean, we're going to be circularly.
Well, sir, your second answer to me was just simply a complete repeat of just simply filibustering and avoiding the question.
Gotcha.
Making an assertion and then saying therefore and repeating the assertion is circular. Your reasonings. You want to say that one is rational justification where the other's not. They're both circular reasoning, and so all you're just giving me is a filibuster double talk response.
Gotcha. Okay. Wait.
So you're admitting that your justification for your impersonal absolute is entirely circular in nature. Isn't circular reasoning in philosophy deemed to be fallacious?
Not at all points in time.
Can you give me an example where
I've said that axioms tend to.
I would agree with that. I think question begging circularity is always going to be fallacious, but then there's also like epistemic circularity, transcendental circularity, worldview circularity, and I don't think those are necessarily fallacious.
Unjustified or are unjustified by definition, which in your apparent world is circular. So can you just give me your spiel for God, since you've got like only 4 minutes? I want to hear you build it up for me, because we're going to go back and forth on this.
Why don't you accept God as an axiom?
Because based on everything that I believe to be true, arising from materialistic properties, there's no observational evidence.
Okay, good.
No. But he said, why isn't it an axiom? And then he goes, based on what I believe. But wait, axioms are just asserted without explanation. So why would it matter what you believe, whether or not it's an axiom or not?
Simply saying is the invocation of God doesn't conform and cohere to what you imagine. Okay, that's not an argument, sir.
Okay. Do you have anything else, or is that only esoteric?
Okay. This is just esoteric, guys.
When you say rational justification, when you mean verification, is that which conforms to your ultimate standard?
Conforms to what my senses can observe.
No, I didn't ask you about your senses. I said your ultimate standard.
What is the ultimate standard? Can you?
Okay, well, your ultimate standard for you would probably be your reason, unless you want to tell me.
His ultimate standard is baby oil and a bunch of webcams pointed at his.
Otherwise,
Sure. Yeah. Reason setting
okay,
up.
Okay, good. Can you explain to me why your reason is the ultimate standard? What is it?
Nope, it's unjustified. I can't do it. It's an axiomatic.
Okay, good. So, so your capacity to reason is unjustified, but then you reason that God is unworthy of belief, but you said that your reason is unjustified. So
yep, that's how philosophy works.
That's how philosophy works.
So what you're telling me, right? So then
that's how we do philosophy. We just assume things are true, and then based on those assumptions, then we do philosophy.
What you're telling me then,
he's actually not wrong, because no one's been able to defeat David Hume's skepticism. So philosophy is pretty much abandoned philosophy, and they're just doing like, I don't even know what philosophy is now. It's just stupid, but Destiny's kind of right. That is what philosophers do. But I don't think that's like, just because modern philosophers do it doesn't mean like, is it okay? Because traditionally philosophers tried to defeat skepticism. The whole point of epistemology was to defeat skepticism. And he's just like, I can't defeat skepticism. We'll just do pretend philosophy.
Is your rational process that God is unworthy of belief is not actually a rational process, though?
No, I disagree with that.
Oh, is there a basis?
Sure, yeah, which I've already said.
Let's see if I can say
ALC, what they do is it's called naturalized epistemology, and basically they're turning epistemology into a science. It's a really good point in the Russ Mannion paper where he talks about like, depending upon how, like, you could do like a psychological approach to epistemology, or a sociological approach to epistemology, or like a pragmatic approach to, like, it's like a science. It's all scientific approaches to epistemology now. It's not nothing like what epistemology traditionally was before, like skepticism.
I think that off of subjective axioms that are unjustified, you can build logical and internally.
Okay, that's fine that you can build on them, but it's a foundation that is empty. It's
that welcome to every single axiom. Your axiom is just as empty as mine.
Right. So how do you know that?
What?
No, it's not, because we don't have an axiom. We say it's justified because it's revealed by God, the source of truth. So there's no like unjustified starting point.
How do I know that? Because you can't appeal to because you're just another human. What do you mean? How do I know that? Whatever foundation you build your beliefs off of is going to be just as arbitrary as mine. Do you not acknowledge that?
They're not arbitrary because we have history: Abraham, Moses, Jesus. We have the Bible. We have metaphysical realities that, how could I put this? So it's not just, there's even more than, I think the history and the Bible, like, that's good. That's tangible. That's good. I don't know. But we have more than that. We have reality itself. When we look at reality, the type of being that would be necessary for there to be this reality is exactly the properties described in the Bible. So it's like, think about algebra, right? 1 plus x equals 3. Now solve for x. Well, we can know x because we know that only the number with the properties that 2 has will like make the solution work. And so we look at reality and we go, what has the properties to make reality work? Just like x needs the properties 2 to make the proof, or what is it called? Yeah, the proof correct. So what properties does reality need? Reality needs something absolute, unchanging, eternal, universal, personal, revelatory to make reality work, right? We need something with those properties. Oh, look, in human history and the Bible, we see a being with those properties. Okay, there you go.
Okay, which is a classic technique to be argumentative to avoid my question. Now,
no. It's not a technique. You've been talking 90% of the time, dude. All right, go for it.
Now, I hold to the Christian worldview, which states that I know certain things not based upon axioms, but based upon God's revelatory acts. Now, if you are
how can you know?
May I, sir? May I
no,
finish?
No, you can't, because I want to ask you now, because you just got to drill down for an hour on my personal philosophy. How can you know what God's commands are?
It's revealed. Like, it's such a dumb question. Revelation is God giving us knowledge. Now, are you going to say God can't give us knowledge? How would you know that? Why couldn't God give us knowledge? It doesn't make any sense. He's
that
freaking
my
God.
fundamental foundational mental states are axiomatic in nature. Now, in the Christian worldview, my most fundamental mental states are not axiomatic. They would be indefinite in the definition of the Christian worldview. They would be.
How can you
I'd like to finish. This is the fifth time.
You're filibustering me, sir.
I'm not.
Oh, come on. Darth wasn't interrupting. Darth led Destiny. He didn't interrupt Destiny.
I'm trying. And
what's annoying is Destiny is interrupting without cause. Like, I think definitely we should interrupt each other in debates. Definitely. But with cause, right? You shouldn't be interrupting without cause. And the fact that, like, Darth is answering his question and he's interrupting him, he should let him answer the question and then interject, or at least let him go on for longer. Like, maybe if Darth is talking for like 3 minutes straight, or 2 minutes, I'd say, like, at least if you ask a question, you should probably give them, I don't know, a couple minutes. If they talk longer than 2 minutes, then yeah, you probably want to interject. But, like, if you're not asking a question, then I think you could interject quicker. But anyways, I think it's, like, rude when you ask someone a question and they're trying to answer your question and you interject them without giving them even like a minute or two to answer. Like, at least give them a minute or two to answer.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. You can finish.
Not only am I not filibustering, what I'm saying is entirely germane to what we're talking about. Unlike you tried to change the subject. Now, I ask you, okay, you stated that my fundamental mental states and my fundamental beliefs are axiomatic in nature, which means there is no justificatory path. But in the Christian worldview, our fundamental commitments and mental states are God ordained. Now, since you reject that and you say that my ultimate commitment of the revelation of the Christian God is axiomatic, then what necessarily follows from that is the falsity of the Christian worldview and the Christian God. Do you have a rational justification that the Christian God does not in fact exist?
I don't want to answer your question
because if you cannot show, I'm not done yet. If you cannot show in a logically necessary way that the Christian God does not exist, then your stipulation that my fundamental commitment and foundational beliefs about Christianity, you cannot show that they are necessarily axioms. But if you're going to stick that they are axioms, then you're going to have to show the falsity of the Christian God. Can you do that?
What I want to know, what you did not answer adequately.
I asked you.
I don't care that you asked me a question. I asked you first, and I feel like you haven't answered it yet. I do not appreciate being filibustered, sir. What I want to know is, how are you able to perceive the teachings of God? I want to know by what do you build fundamentally on that allows you to perceive the teachings, or to read something in a book, or to hear something that a preacher says. I want to know what you build this from foundationally.
You just want to do a community college lecture. Now,
okay. I'm sorry, because the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, your foundations are just as arbitrary as mine, but you seem to not think so.
They're not arbitrary because they're revealed by God.
You are relying.
God isn't arbitrary.
No, your senses just as much as I am to hear about whatever made-up religion you want to hear about. So I want to know why you think you're...
No, so this is what... this is another thing, another BS thing that Josie tried to do. I gotta tell this to Jib. I rely on my senses to read the Bible. Therefore, empiricism trumps revelation. So he's confusing. When they say that we have to use our senses to read the Bible, therefore we're actually doing empiricism and not revelatory epistemology, they're confusing. They're conflating chronological priority with logical priority. This is what Josie did to me last night too. So just because chronologically I have to read the Bible to learn about God doesn't mean that like God isn't logically prior to me reading the Bible. Okay, chronologically, yeah, I read the Bible before knowing God, but logically, God is still logically prior to me reading the Bible. And so, um, like as Darth pointed out, causality presupposes, or perception presupposes causality. Perception also presupposes uniformity of nature. If nature wasn't uniform, I couldn't read the Bible. So that's revelation right there. That's God's invisible qualities being made apparent and obvious, that there has to be this order in the world for me to even look at the Bible and read it, right? And so everything we look at is a revelation. Every time we look and observe any experience we have is a revelation from God. So this is some bullshit they do where they go, "Oh, you had to read the Bible before you knew God, therefore you're an empiricist." No, that's conflation of chronological priority with logical priority.
Foundational way of interpreting this is more valid than my foundational way. When in the fact of the matter is, both of them are just as arbitrary and subjective as the other.
But I don't think they're gonna copyright strike me, right? I don't think you have to do that. I don't think you have to do that when you're reacting to a video. I think that's only for like. I don't think I have to do that. I know what you're saying though for like fair use, but I see React channels all the time and they don't do that. I watch a lot of React videos, so.
Did everybody hear that?
And I am. This is transformative because I am pausing it and adding to it. So.
Yeah. Did everybody just hear what he just conceded to? He just.
I didn't concede anything.
Okay, sir, I was just muted.
I didn't concede anything.
And I would appreciate that if you would not overtalk me and try to obstruct my ability to respond. Okay. Did you just state that both of our views are ultimately arbitrary?
That the foundations of them are, yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. So basically, your atheism is in actuality at its foundation, in terms of its ultimate framework, arbitrary. Therefore, if you're arbitrary, then
I have to cut you off because
the person that would copyright me would have to be Tom Rabbit. Tom Rabbit would never do that. Tom Rabbit is a total gentleman. He would never do anything like that.
Incredibly disingenuous right now. Every single philosophy and every single statement that has ever been made in the history of all of mankind is arbitrary if the foundational axioms are arbitrary. That's what you're saying. Nobody believes that. Nobody agrees with that. Most people acknowledge that axioms are arbitrary or unjustified. Just because you build something off of an unjustified axiom doesn't make those statements all equivalently like illogical or irrational.
Yes, it does. So if you don't justify induction, any claim based on induction would be unjustified. That's incorrect.
You can build consistent, rational, logical systems off of unjustified foundational axioms.
No, you can't.
Acknowledge that or no?
Getting a degree is important to me because I feel like I'm setting myself up.
I'm gonna buy YouTube Premium, I think. Today.
Yeah, I don't appreciate how you're talking over me when I'm attempting to respond. Now, the fact
answer that one question.
The fact that I'm answering.
Can you answer one question? No. I gotta go do my abstinence routine. Give me a second.
The question, I don't accept that all of our ultimate starting points are arbitrary. That is your assertion. Nor do I care what other people believe. I'm asking you what you believe. Now, you have admitted that all of the ideas and lines of reasoning that you put forth ultimately depend upon a foundation of arbitrariness. Now, okay, sir. Okay, now, if you say that my foundational commitments or starting points are arbitrary, that necessarily entails the falsity of the Christian God. Do you understand that necessarily follows?
Not necessarily, because
no, sir, it necessarily.
I'm just saying. I said no.
Let me explain to you.
Question if I'm not allowed to answer.
Correct. Okay, because if you assert that my most ultimate commitment, that the Christian God has revealed himself through natural and special revelation, if you say that most fundamental commitment that I hold to is arbitrary, then it necessarily follows the Christian God does not exist. Because in the case that the Christian God does exist, that fundamental commitment is not arbitrary. It is granted and ordained by God. And by definition, within the Christian worldview, it wouldn't be arbitrary. Now, if it is the case
Darth is
that
cooking.
my most foundational commitment that the Christian God has revealed himself in natural and special revelation, and if that ultimate commitment and foundational belief that I have is in fact arbitrary, as you say, that necessarily follows that the Christian God does not exist. Now, in the case that the Christian God would exist, that would render your statement as not necessarily true. Do you have a rational justification that the Christian God does not in fact exist?
If I'm starting from my materialistic fundamentals of the
Yes. If all my unjustified beliefs are true, then the Christian God doesn't exist.
universe, I believe that no evidence has been presented that would compel me to believe that God exists.
God, this is so bad.
A question.
They think God is like proving there's crackers in the pantry. They don't understand. God's like a totally different type of fact, because think about this. Like God being God would make every fact true. God is the type of fact that makes all facts true. All facts are true because of the fact of God. He's the ultimate fact. So they're treating an ultimate fact as if it's just like crackers in the pantry.
I said, do you have a rational justification that the Christian God necessarily does not exist?
Of course not. I don't think you can ever say that something necessarily.
So, is it okay? So then, is it possible that the Christian God might exist, sir?
It's possible that anything might exist.
Okay, good. In the case that the Christian God exists, would my fundamental commitment that the Christian God has revealed himself, would it be arbitrary or would it be ordained of God in the existence of the Christian God?
I don't know. I guess it would depend on.
Well, the answer.
I don't know. No, the answer is yes. You just got cooked. Take him out the oven.
No.
I can't think of anything more sad than building like a high level belief off of a God, off of a single like axiomatic unjustified assumption.
A high level belief. He's doing. Oh my God. What a hypocrite.
And then pretending that your assumption is any more justified than my fundamental assumptions. It seems like pretty ridiculous.
What are you how does that seem ridiculous? If God gives me knowledge about reality, then I have justified knowledge about reality. You're saying God doesn't do that. Well, then how do you justify anything about reality? How is that ridiculous?
Sure. Now, you just said that you cannot show that the Christian God does not exist. Therefore, in the case that the Christian God might exist, and you said it's possible, then when you assert that my fundamental commitment that the Christian God has revealed himself is not necessarily arbitrary. And if it's not necessarily arbitrary, then when you assert that it is arbitrary, you're just speculating. You have not demonstrated that that is necessarily true, and you're just speculating. And in fact, everything that you reason, according to your own admittance, starts from an arbitrary foundation. So therefore, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. You've overtalked me many times. You have overtalked me many times. And I understand, because you're trying to hide from the fact that you have, and that I'm focusing, that you have ultimately conceded that no matter how sophisticated your discursive reasoning is, it ultimately rests upon a foundation that is entirely arbitrary. So if you reason A because of B, because of C, because of D, and then you say it ends up all the way at Z, and Z is arbitrary, the whole chain of discursive reasoning from A to Z is in fact ultimately arbitrary.
That is not a fair comparison. When
you no, sir.
What are you talking about? That's exactly what you're doing. How's that? It's not fair. Dad, you're not fair. It's not fair. He's not fair to me.
Stop. You're
said the
talking in
starting
broken
point
logic.
And anyway.
Oh no, I don't want you to mute him because that feels really dirty.
Oh God. Okay.
Don't.
Yeah. Okay. I won't mute him. Go for it. Go.
I thought you like it dirty.
Okay, wait. I'm just saying that, like, your statement that from A to B to C to C, whatever, you're implying that like axioms have already been established before logical statements are made. Like premise, conclusion. Okay, and you say, well, if you start with an unjustified axiom, all your logical statements are false. That's not true. You can have an unjustified axiom, as all axioms are, and then build logical statements A, B, C, D, U that it can be internally consistent. Wait, did you bully him out? Did he leave?
Nice.
Oh.
Darth, you there? Darth?
Maybe he's getting a communication from God for how to proceed. I'm sorry.
Darth, you left? No, he's dead.
You fucking bullied him out, dude. God damn it. All right. Okay. I'm sorry. Fuck.
Okay. I'm sure. Well, he did say he needed to go in 5 minutes, like twin.
Yeah. Yeah. You bullied him out. Not a very good performance by Destiny. Not very good. So there you go. That's the end of the video. So here, I gotta do some stuff. I think I'm gonna stream later. I want to stream the interaction I had with Josie. So thanks for watching. Subscribe to Without Lies, Islam Dies on YouTube.